The rain battered our small Connecticut home, a relentless drumbeat against the windows as if the sky itself wept for secrets untold. 2 months had passed since my husband James left for his latest business trip, his absence a hollow ache in my chest. The house felt too large, too quiet, save for the creak of floorboards and the whispers of my own restless thoughts. At 27, I was adrift, tethered only by routine, until he came. My husband's uncle, Thomas, 42, with eyes like storm clouds and a voice that carried the weight of unspoken stories, arrived daily to tend to the house's endless repairs. His presence was a steady current, pulling me under without warning. Each night he stayed, the air grew thicker, charged with something forbidden, something alive. I told myself it was nothing, just loneliness playing tricks on my heart. But when his gaze lingered too long, or his hand brushed mine while passing a coffee mug, my pulse betrayed me, racing with a hunger I dared not name. Last night he stood in my doorway, shadows pooling around him, and said my name, Clara, like it was a prayer. My breath caught, and the world tilted. What was this pull, this dangerous spark igniting between us? Why did my heart scream for him when it belonged to another? The rain hasn't stopped, and neither have the questions clawing at my soul. What happens when you love someone you shouldn't? What secrets will unravel if I let him step closer? I'm standing on the edge of something vast and treacherous, and I need to know. What happens next? The rain hadn't let up for days, turning our quiet street into a river of secrets. I stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, the steam curling around my face like a lover's whisper. James had called earlier, his voice crackling through the phone, distant in more ways than one. 2 more weeks, Clara, he'd said, oblivious to the tremor in my heart. I hung up, feeling the weight of his absence settle deeper, a stone in my chest. The house groaned under the storm's assault, and I wondered if it, too, felt abandoned. Thomas arrived just after dusk, his work boots leaving muddy prints on the porch. He was a carpenter, his hands rough from years of shaping wood, but there was a gentleness in the way he moved, like he was afraid of breaking something fragile. Maybe me. "Storm's getting worse," he said, shaking rain from his dark hair, his eyes catching mine for a moment too long. I nodded, my throat tight, and offered him a bowl of soup. He stayed for dinner, as he often did, but tonight felt different. The air hummed, electric, as if the storm had followed him inside. We sat at the oak table, the one James and I picked out at a flea market 3 years ago, back when love felt simple. Thomas's presence filled the room, his broad shoulders casting shadows that danced with the flickering candlelight. We talked about small things, the leak in the attic, the roses wilting in the garden, but every word carried a hidden weight. His laughter, low and warm, sent a shiver through me, and I caught myself staring at the curve of his jaw, the way his fingers traced the rim of his glass. "Stop it, Clara," I scolded myself, but my heart refused to listen. Later, he offered to check the attic, insisting the storm might worsen the leak. I followed, clutching a flashlight, my bare feet cold against the hardwood stairs. The attic was a maze of shadows, dust motes swirling in the beam of light. Thomas moved with purpose, inspecting beams, his flannel shirt stretching across his back. I stood too close, drawn by some invisible thread, and when he turned, our eyes locked. "Clara," he said, his voice a soft rumble, "you don't have to stay up here. It's cold." But I couldn't move. The flashlight trembled in my hand, casting wild patterns on the walls. He stepped closer, and the world narrowed to the space between us. "You're shaking," he murmured, his hand brushing mine as he took the flashlight. His touch was fire, searing through the lies I told myself. I should have stepped back, should have remembered James, but all I could see was Thomas, his storm gray eyes, the quiet strength in his frame. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't move away. Instead, he reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. his fingers lingering against my skin. My breath hitched and I felt it. The spark, the forbidden pull I'd been fighting for weeks. "Clara," he said again, and this time, it wasn't just my name. It was a question, a confession, a plea. My heart pounded, torn between duty and desire. I wanted to step into his arms, to let the storm outside drown out the storm within me, but guilt clawed at my chest, a reminder of the ring on my finger. "We can't," I whispered, but my voice cracked, betraying the longing I couldn't hide. Thomas's gaze softened, but he didn't push, didn't cross the line we both knew was there. He only nodded, stepping back, leaving me cold in the attic's dim light. That night, he slept in the guest room, but I lay awake, the rain a relentless chant outside my window. My mind replayed his touch, his voice, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. I was married, but my heart was slipping, falling into a love I didn't understand. What was this pull between us? And how long could I resist it before everything unraveled? The storm didn't break, and neither did the tension coiling inside me. Morning light filtered through the curtains, gray and heavy, as if the world knew the weight of my thoughts. I stood in the kitchen, gripping my coffee mug, its warmth a poor substitute for the fire Thomas's touch had ignited last night. He was already up, hammering away at the loose shingles on the roof, his silhouette a shadow against the overcast sky. Each thud of his hammer echoed my heartbeat, a rhythm I couldn't ignore. I was married, bound by vows, but my heart was a traitor, whispering Thomas's name. I busied myself with chores, scrubbing counters that didn't need cleaning, avoiding the mirror that might show the guilt in my eyes. But when Thomas came inside, rain-soaked and smelling of cedar, my resolve crumbled. "You're soaked," I said, handing him a towel, my fingers brushing his. The contact sent a jolt through me, and I saw it in his eyes too, a flicker of something wild, barely restrained. "Thanks, Clara," he said, his voice low, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. He didn't move away, and neither did I. We ended up in the living room, the fire crackling as we shared a blanket on the couch, pretending to watch an old movie. The space between us felt alive, charged with unspoken words. "You ever think about what could have been?" he asked suddenly, his eyes fixed on the screen. My breath caught. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I knew. He turned to me, his gaze piercing. "If life had gone a different way? If you weren't tied down?" The words hung there, heavy with meaning. My heart screamed to confess, to admit I'd imagined a life where his hands held mine without guilt, where his laughter filled my days. I should have stopped it there, should have reminded him of James, of duty. But instead, I leaned closer, drawn by the gravity of him. "Sometimes," I whispered, my voice trembling. His hand found mine under the blanket, his thumb tracing slow circles on my palm, each touch a spark that burned away my defenses. "Clara," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've tried to stay away. I've tried to be the good uncle, the good man. But you're in my head every damn day." My heart stuttered, and I felt the world tilt again, like it had in the attic. I wanted to tell him he was in my head too, that his presence was a melody I couldn't stop humming. The rain pounded harder, drowning out the movie, and I let myself fall into the moment. His hand cupped my cheek, his touch gentle but searing, and I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of him pull me under. "We're playing with fire," I murmured, but my body leaned into his, betraying every warning in my mind. "Then let it burn," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. My heart raced, and for a moment I imagined giving in, letting the storm of us consume everything. But the glint of my wedding ring caught the firelight, a cold reminder of the life I'd promised. I pulled back, my chest tight with longing and shame. "Thomas, I can't do this to James." His eyes darkened, not with anger but with understanding, and he nodded, his hand falling away. "I know," he said softly, but the pain in his voice mirrored my own. We sat in silence, the space between us now a chasm, though his warmth lingered on my skin. I wanted to bridge that gap, to throw myself into his arms and forget the world. But I didn't. Not yet. That night, I lay awake again, the rain a relentless chorus to my turmoil. Thomas was just down the hall, close enough to hear his steady breathing through the thin walls. My heart ached for him, for the life we could have had. But guilt anchored me to James. What was I becoming? A woman who loved two men, or a woman who'd lost herself? The storm outside raged on, and I wondered how long I could hold back the storm within. The rain stopped the next morning, leaving a heavy silence that pressed against the house like a held breath. I woke with Thomas's words echoing in my mind. Then let it burn. And my heart split between longing and loyalty. I stood at my bedroom window, staring at the sodden garden, the roses drooping under the weight of last night's storm. James would be home in a week, and the thought of facing him with this secret gnawing at me felt like a betrayal sharper than any blade. Yet Thomas was still here, his presence a pulse in the house pulling me toward a choice I wasn't ready to make. I found him in the kitchen, brewing coffee, his movements deliberate, as if he too was navigating a minefield of emotions. "Morning, Clara," he said, his voice soft but guarded, his eyes searching mine for something. Permission, maybe, or forgiveness. I wanted to tell him to leave, to save us both from this impossible pull, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sat across from him, the table a fragile barrier between duty and desire. "We need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, setting his mug down, his hands still, waiting. "I can't stop thinking about you," I admitted, the confession spilling out like water from a cracked dam. "But I'm married, Thomas. I made a vow." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd look away, but he didn't. "I know," he said, his voice raw, "and I hate myself for wanting you, Clara. But I've never felt this alive, not in years." His words were a mirror to my own heart, and I felt the chasm between us shrink, the air crackling with what we couldn't say. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine, not touching but close enough to feel the warmth. "I'll leave if you want me to," he said, his eyes locked on mine, offering me an out I didn't want. My heart pounded, and I saw it then. A life where I woke to his laughter, where his touch was mine to claim without guilt. But James's face flashed in my mind, his steady smile, the man who'd built this life with me. I closed my eyes, torn, and when I opened them, Thomas was still there, waiting, his gaze a lifeline and a curse. "I don't want you to leave," I whispered, and the words felt like a surrender. His hand closed over mine, gentle but firm, and I let myself feel it. The spark, the forbidden warmth that set my soul alight. We didn't move closer, didn't cross that final line, but we sat there, hands entwined, letting the moment hold us. It was enough for now to acknowledge this love, this impossible thing blooming in the cracks of my marriage. Days passed, and we danced around the truth, stealing glances and fleeting touches, each one a promise and a wound. When James returned, his suitcase thumping in the hallway, I greeted him with a smile that hid my fractured heart. Thomas left that evening, his eyes lingering on me as he said goodbye, a silent vow that this wasn't over. I watched him go, my chest tight with love and loss, knowing I'd see him again tomorrow and the day after because he was part of this house, this life. Now, I lie awake beside James, his steady breathing a reminder of the life I chose. But my heart wanders to Thomas, to the fire we kindled in the storm. I don't know what comes next, whether I'll stay or burn everything down for a love that feels like fate. The mystery of us lingers, a question unanswered. And I'm left wondering if love can ever be simple again, or if I'll forever be caught in this storm, chasing a spark I can't let go.